It's time for breaking bread with Papa. Hey, don't you know? Hey, it's sourdough. Hey, it's time for breaking bread with Papa. Hey, don't you know? Hey, it's also a show. Hey.
Well, this is very exciting because I have to say, as we are friendly,
Yes,
and we know of each other.
Yes.
We're not friends yet.
No.
But I will say that we've had this little flurry of interaction over the short period when you came on my radio show, and then through Joe when you jumped on his show, and then you sent me to Midnight Gospel, your new show on Netflix, and then we started texting back and forth. And, you know, there are just times in your life when you meet people and you're like, oh, no, we're going to be friends.
that's what I thought. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. Because you know what? You get that feeling when you're afraid to articulate, you're afraid to say it. Because you don't want to sound, I don't want to sound like a jerk or a weirdo or, I think we're going to be friends, man. But that's exactly what I thought. But it's not, but this kind of thing is not just where you think, oh, I think we're going to be friends. It's even weirder for me. It's weirder than that because you're like, we're already friends.
Yes. I know. I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. I'm with you. That's exactly where I'm at. And I was like, I don't want to just keep texting him because he's going to think I'm a weirdo. But I think what we've both established is we are weirdos, and thinking each other as the weirdo is probably going to be the best way to go.
That's the best way for sure to go. We are weirdos. Definitely weirdos. And yeah, man, thank you again
so
for that
great.
bread. I really appreciate it. That's a really sweet thing to get. And it's wonderful to just for someone to show up at your house with bread. It's old school. Wonderful.
Well, I'm happy to do it. And it was funny because I was thinking about it. When we'll do the show again, when we can actually sit and actually eat bread together and drink wine and cheese and whatever else we're going to do. But I wanted to get you bread before we actually talk. And I was like, I was thinking, like, does my wife think I'm crazy? That I'm like, I've got a podcast, I've got to deliver bread. And I like run off into the car and take off. And she must be thinking, wow, he used to be a comedian. He used to be, and now he's making bread deliveries. Yeah. But I have to say, every single time, it's worth it. It's always a good thing to do. When I started stand-up comedy, and I was like trying to figure out, like, should I go to this horrible open mic or should I go to this thing? And Daryl Hammond actually gave me from Saturday Night Live gave me great advice. He said, always go. Something good always happens when you go. Yeah. And it's true. Like you'd go, and if I got on stage, it'd be great. If I met someone, it just being there was a good thing. And the same thing holds for doing the bread delivery. Every time you go, you give it to somebody, they get to have bread. They send me a picture of them eating it with their family. It just is like planting a seed. It's crazy.
This is one of the sayings of Ram Dass's guru, who I consider to be my guru, which is, people were always like, the hippies were coming to him in the 60s, and they wanted to learn how to do like crazy shit, like psychic stuff, astrally project, telepathy, all that stuff that gurus could do, right. Which is called, what's the word they use for it? Cities. It's called a city, which is like basically a word for like, there's a million versions of it, but being able to heal people or stuff that these days is called woo-woo. And he said, if you want to gather those powers, the best thing you can do is feed people. Just start feeding people.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Isn't that weird?
Together what powers? What do you mean?
Cities, like, telepathy, the various things you hear about people being able to do, levitation, right. Flying, like the ability to like touch someone and put them into like the state called samadhi, as it's called, which is like this. Weird, you see it at the evangelicals, actually. You see it at tent revivals and the Pentecostals, right. When they start like that state. That's called a SIDDHI, city. And his advice was not like, meditate. It was feed people. And the times I've done what you're doing, which is I bring food to anybody. And because, a lot of people take what he said and they try to turn it into something deeper. Like, oh, you must mean like feed people with my art or feed people with no.
Right.
What if it literally you just start bringing food to people? The moment you do that, you put yourself in a weird, dreamy state, man. It's like,
I know.
You know what I'm saying? Enough to the point where you thought you felt, oh fuck, am I going crazy? It's
yeah.
You know, it immediately throws you into the most bizarre, self-questioning place. Anytime I've done it, I'm like, God, man, I hope I'm not like losing it right now that I'm going to bring food to people.
But would you do that? Do you like do it with that idea in mind, or was it just kind of matched what you already were doing in a way?
No, man, I don't do it as much as I don't do it that. I mean, you know, I feed my family in the sense that I try to cook for them in the mornings. And even that is an amazing thing. I mean, just the act of like making food for someone and then giving them food and just doing that with no strings attached is a great intoxicant. It makes me high as a kite. And what
I know
that, you know, I just love that. That feel, and because otherwise, I'm not saying like, oh, feed people because they're hungry or any of that. I think there's a lot. Even though what you're doing is reaching outside yourself, you're allowed to have self-interest. It's self-interest does not like make it so that the act of giving is no longer valid. Right.
No, it's true. It's like I've gotten over that kind of thinking for myself. It's like, you know what? Everything that I do, that I always enjoy or feel like I'm getting worth from, even if it's helping other people, I always get something from it. And it was like, for a while when I was younger, I was like, well, then maybe there's no value in that because I'm really doing it because I'm selfish. But no, I think my spirit is telling me to go and do this thing. It's almost like feeding your own soul that way. Yeah. And it's like, so why shouldn't this one be fed so I can keep feeding others?
Yeah, man. In a way. I mean, like, you know, I remember the way I got out of that trap, and it's a real trap. And I think it's a sweet trap to get into because you have a version of the universe that you wish existed that maybe at least doesn't exist for us. But, and you're also feeling like that's like the super ego. You're trying to be Gandhi or some shit. And I'm not that. But the thing that got me out of it is I realized how insane it would be if like I was on fire and a firefighter came to put out the fire. And I was like, you're not doing this because you want to be a hero, are you? You're doing this out of, you know what I mean? It's madness. Like on the other side of the thing is a person who's probably just going to enjoy the food you give them regardless of whatever your weird neurotic reasoning is for doing it. And yeah,
it definitely, I mean, as far as the act of literally like feeding them, like as soon as you sit and as soon as you eat, you're shifted, you're calming down because it takes up so much of your being, right? It takes up just the act of chewing, swallowing, and what's that doing to your system? You're all of a sudden you're different from the person that was like scurrying into the house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It makes you a little more present. And I have to say thank you for I just was thinking I was dropping off bread and you gave me these sweet grapefruits. These grow in your yard?
Yeah, they sure do. We've got this wonderful grapefruit tree. I've been squeezing that into vodka.
Ah, really?
Really good.
Good for you. Now, when we talked last, you were talking about how you were going to kind of step up your drinking game.
I have since we talked.
You say that with a little sound of regret in your voice.
Oh, I didn't mean for there to be that regret. I'm nervous because I've moved past the regret that I was feeling, and now I'm just enjoying it. And now I'm like, oh my God, I'm having like guilt-free drinking. I haven't felt this it's rare for me because generally anything that's bringing me pleasure, I like try to put some thread of guilt inside of it, you know? But in this case, I've just been really just enjoying drinking and it's probably bad news.
I know. This week was the first time since we've been in stay at home where I was like, maybe I should take a couple days off. Maybe I should, and not even like I've been drinking that much. I mean, when we were talking about it, I was selling my method of the one cocktail a day method, where at 5:00, 5:30, when everything is wind down, as a gentleman would, you get a cocktail and you sit with your martini and you enjoy yourself and you enjoy that moment. And then you sit back and think for a minute, like, well, I'm pretty buzzed right now. I probably don't need another. Very difficult to pull off.
Yes.
Very, very difficult because you stop talking, and as my friend's mother says, the martini starts talking, and then and they're like, "Let's go get another one."
Yes.
Which is okay, which is fine. But I feel like I've been going at it pretty hard for a good couple of months now that we've been in this situation, and I feel like maybe I should take a week off just to kind of recalibrate.
Well, I think that's got to be, if you're going to be a true hedonist, you don't just get to be a hedonist. You actually have to have this strange discipline that goes along with it. Unfortunately, this is the problem of tolerance. This is it's a nightmare that our bodies are so clever in resisting high states of pleasure to the point where they begin punishing us, and then the thing becomes no longer even a pleasurable experience from the beginning. And so I think, there's something to be said for spiritualized hedonism, where you're, accepting your impermanence as a human on the planet. You're rejoicing in the ability to amplify certain states of consciousness, whatever they may be. And also recognizing that if you do this every single day, it's not, okay, we're melting our body with poison. Great, whatever. But really, it's just we're not enjoying it anymore. And at that point, because I would say, what is that wonderful stand-up joke about drugs? Some things are better than living, which I love that. And it's such a unspeakable truth. But if the thing is actually not better than living anymore, then now you're just addicted. And that sucks. I get addicted to stuff all the time though, but I can always kick it.
Right. Have you had those moments where it's gotten a little way away from you, or you were always kind of in control of it?
Oh man, I got addicted to Xanax. I did this benzo. It's like my dad gave me this like VA PTSD sleep medication called Restoral. Ooh. Oh, the
boy.
Best. You go to, oh my God. This is this is stuff for people who have like bad PTSD, and you fall asleep. You don't just fall asleep. It's not like Ambien, which just turns you off and then you like turn back on. For me, I just feel as tired as I was when I went to sleep. This stuff, you feel like whatever you're laying on, suddenly it just feels like just a king's pillow, like you're on a cloud. No. You're laying there, just this sense of like pure euphoria and peace. You drift off into this glorious sleep, and you get real sleep. And so you wake up in the morning and you still feel a little of that sweet benzo softness, oh, it's nice. And then, but then being really a dummy, because it's like due diligence. If you're going to do drugs, man, you need to research what you're taking. I was just like, this stuff's great. But on top of that, I was doing this tour through Australia. And so I was also taking Xanax. So I was doubling up benzos. I would say I was addicted in the sense, I was addicted. I wanted to take them every day. But then I got home after this tour, and I've been taking them for about, I'd say 3 weeks, something like that. And then I got home, and I'm like, I don't want to be in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest anymore. Like I'm like doing the like Nurse Ratched giving you pills thing. I'm all fuzzy and foggy, and my body feels like thick with like the drug, and I'm like, fuck this, I don't want to do this. So I'm like, I'll just stop taking them. And so then I'm like, I remember for some reason I had to go to the store. I'm standing in line at the store, and I get a headache, and then my arm starts twitching. Like, that thing where you're like sleeping and your leg twitches? My arm starts twitching. I went to lay in bed, and my mind was telling me, all you got to do, and I had pills left from this tour. They're like, just take another Xanax, and this is going to go away. And I knew that if I did that, I would become a full-time benzo addict. So I spent 30 hours in bed, sicker than shit, having to throw up. Well, these are with physical withdrawals. I've never had that before.
Oh.
And then I stopped taking them, and I have taken them since, but only like once or twice or a little bit in a row. But but that was scary.
That's crazy. That's in the 3 week period. That's in just
here's
over
the
3.
thing. After all this is happening, and after it's happened, I start looking up what the danger I was in because I just didn't know. And if you look it up, thank God it didn't happen to me. For some people, the withdrawal never stops. So yeah, it does. They're neurologically permanently changed. Like the thing that they say can happen with that baldness medication, that can make you permanently impotent. And with benzos, you can be permanently in a state. There's a name for it. I can't remember the name for it, but it can get you for. Yeah.
Oh my God, I would be disturbed by that if I didn't just hear what you just said about the baldness medication. Which baldness medication does that? Because I took some. I wasn't impotent. But that's terrifying. If I never would have taken it if I knew that you could be impotent.
Yeah, it's the stuff. I think it's the stuff that they put in Propecia. If you look it up, there's all these lawsuits and stuff related to it. Permanent impotence, you know. Yeah, I was taking that stuff, and one of the things they say it could happen, I mean, all this stuff is, I think, unverified, is testicular cancer. I was taking this a long time ago, and I ended up getting testicular cancer. I don't know if there's a connection, but I know that I took this stuff they say maybe can give you that, and then I got that. It also could be that I was keeping a laptop on my, when I was addicted to World of Warcraft, I would play with a laptop right on my dick, you know? Just frying my balls. I don't know what it was, man. But that stuff's dangerous. Isn't that weird, though? The baldness medication, it's like you can't just have a baldness cure. Like, you got to, like, give up
So crazy.
If you want.
Oh, my God.
But it didn't happen to you.
I know. How vain. How vain. You know what I mean? Like especially when you're in a relationship and you already have somebody who's happy with you.
Yeah.
And then the idea that I'm going to try and look better. For what? For what?
Yeah. You look great, by the way, man. You look great.
Thanks.
You're a beautiful person. Yeah, hell yeah, man. You've got like, you should, like, it would honestly, people would be annoyed if you grew your hair back. Like, if all of a sudden you grew it back, it would be like, people would feel like kind of let down.
If I just had a hairline down here all of a sudden.
Yeah, or all of a sudden just long locks that, like, just suddenly you've got this beautiful long flowing hair. People
That'd be
feel
so
like, what have you done?
I know. You know what I've been concerned with recently with it is I'll see guys like in the news or something like Supreme Court Roberts, right? He's the Supreme Justice.
Yeah.
And there was a shot from behind. He was like talking to the president, and he was a shot from behind, and it was like you could tell, like from him looking in the mirror, he's keeping this little part going because that frames his face. But from the back, it's just bald.
That's
and
my
then this
bald.
little...
Look. Tell me when you can see it.
All right. Yep, I see it.
I got the old Friars.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
And I'm really enjoying this era of like performance online because you don't see the old thing back there. Which
it's all said on.
It's the best. I love it. That being said, it's like I gave up. I remember when it used to bother me, and now it's like, you know, I'm just gonna let that thing sit back there because that's who I am. And what are you gonna do? Honestly, I would change it though. I don't want to sound like I'm from if I would immediately grow it back if I could, but I can't.
I know. It's such a silly thing. Just let it be. I look at Larry David as like the pioneer. It's like that guy looks so good. Yeah. He's totally bald. He's got a little thing coming off the back. He doesn't grow that much facial. He's just like, you can do it.
Yeah.
You just gotta. It's like wearing a hat. It's like if you own wearing a hat, you're gonna look good in a hat.
I know. What is more sad? And by the way, for all the folks in a battle with their baldness, but I used to, when I was in the battle, I would go online and look up YouTube videos, like thinking I could find some, you know, unknown recipe out there. And these guys, man, you see these guys who've like attached their entire value to like the protein strands coming out of the top of their body.
I know. It makes no sense.
It's sad. It's terrible. And you know, they're like taking they're taking like the level of drug cocktails that people with like really, really bad disorders are taking. They're taking Propecia, but they're rubbing in weird creams, but then they're also taking other shit as well that you've never heard of and mixing all this shit together just so they can have hair again. It's
I know. That's what really knocked me off of trying was when I got the drops. I got the the Rogaine, and just the act of looking in the mirror and putting drops on my head, knowing my wife is waiting for me in the bedroom, by the way, putting drops on, and then like rubbing it and then like scampering back. I was like, I can't. I caught myself doing this and was like, I'm out.
That's
I can't
great.
do this. This is more humiliating than walking around with no hair.
Yes, friend. And you look at that greasy bald after you rub the Rogaine in because it gets a sheen. It's not like it's like an oil slick up there, this greasy, sad puddle of chemicals. Which on the product, I remember reading it, and it's like they really tiptoe around the efficacy of this stuff. It's not like they're like 1 out of maybe 6 people could possibly have some result over 6 months.
I know.
But if
really.
you stop, you're done.
Yeah, and if you stop it, it makes all the rest of your hair leave.
Yeah.
Oh, this stuff is the
Don't
worst.
touch
Just the
pregnant
worst.
people with it. I mean, that's I think that's on there too. Meaning it's if it's fucking up babies in the womb, what's it doing to your body?
Yeah, just get a cap, you jackass.
Get a cap.
Oh my God.
It's weird. People used to wear toupees though. Like I know they still do, but remember that was more accepted. Like if you were going bald, you could get away with a wig.
You just wore a wig. Men just wore wigs.
Yeah.
That is weird. That is really so bizarre.
Yeah.
To think like you would go in your bathroom and on a little round little head would be your pick of the day, and you'd put a little wig on and then just go out into the world.
No one would make fun of you. Nobody would be like, "Are you out of your mind? What the fuck are you, George Washington?" It was just like, "Oh yeah, he wears a wig."
Yeah. Oh, that's just Bob. Yes, totally wig. And no one would say it out loud. They just say it like kind of behind your back, like, yeah, he's got a wig.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so weird.
Weird.
Oh my God. So you grew up in North Carolina? Is that where you grew up, or just where you were born?
No, I was born in Brunswick, Georgia, and then I traveled around the country up until my like the 5th grade, and then landed in North Carolina, and then went from North Carolina to Maryland, and then back to North Carolina. I didn't grow up in any one place. I traveled around a bunch, but I say North Carolina as like a convenience.
Right. Okay. And this was for your dad's work, right?
Well, yeah, I guess, yeah. My dad was, we ended up wandering. I had one of those wandering families. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like one of those, which is a lot of people don't realize they're gypsies. I think that's one of the weird things about American culture is the people who just happen to be the people who are always moving from one place to the next for whatever the reason may be. They always pretend the next place they land is going to be where their home is. That's where they're going to grow up or whatever. And for some folks, that's just not the case. So you're always like having this bizarre attachment to a place because you've deluded yourself into imagining that even though you've had 15 addresses, this is going to be the last one. And then you go to a new place and try to forget all the addresses you had instead of celebrating that gypsy lifestyle. I think that's what's cool about gypsies is they just are nomadic people who celebrate their movement, whereas we somehow attach a lot to our address and to the staying at a place a long time.
But that might be a heady thing though to tell your kids that you're constantly moving, because I feel like, I don't know. Do you think if you had been told when you were young, like, okay, hey, we're here in Virginia now, but don't get used to it because at any moment we're going.
Caravan. Well, I think in the gypsy culture, the thing that they have is a massive traveling caravan. So they're not really leaving because they're always with that group of people, and that's their neighborhood. That they're in a moving neighborhood. With folks in the United States who have this situation, which is often like for me, I think my dad was struggling with PTSD, and I think that their marriage wasn't really working out, and so they were doing a very classic move, which is to move, thinking, oh, if we go to this new place, that's where it's going to work out. When it just, this is one of the great mistakes people make. So, man, no, I think like the for me with my son, we want to buy a house somewhere and we want to stay there and have a real family there. And because I thank God don't have PTSD. I'm not running away from helicopters or whatever people who have that are. But yeah, I think ideally it would be nice. I think that is the best situation.
Yeah. To be settled, you mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And not just I'm not saying for the individual. I like the whole Camus existentialist romantic wandering in your youth thing all over the world even. I know I have friends who do that, who just have no address. And I know comics who are like that, like Tom Rhodes. He just, wanders the world. It's a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
I think. And something the travelers, I'm sure you've run into them. They don't have an address.
Sure.
They just travel. That's cool. But now that I'm a dad and I'm experiencing that level of tranquility and joy that comes from being a parent, and that weird, almost narcotic, like I don't know what it is. It's just like an elemental happiness from having a kid.
Yeah.
I definitely want to lay down roots. I'm just, right now I'm up in the air about staying in LA, now that we're all telecommuting. You know what I'm saying? Like the industry, the landscape is changing so dramatically right now. I keep wondering, like, if we're not going to be able to, if the clubs aren't going to really open up for a few years, and if they're all going to be at half capacity, and if like the city is just going to be sort of in this liminal pandemic state, I don't understand how the property value is justified. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's because it's close to the beach. It's still a beautiful state. It's still like, I didn't realize when this went down that how many people travel here. I thought Hollywood was the thing that really made this economy, but it's in a large part, it just purely tourism. People just want to come here and get to the beach and see those cliffs and all of that part of it. I mean, I totally get you for what we do. I know really successful comics that just broke out and went to Tennessee or Maine or a place like that. But I don't know. I wrestle with it too. Like I go through places and I think, well, this is so cool. This is such a small town and this is a nice little breath of fresh air. But then I get itchy and need to be around energy. I need to be around action. It's weird kind of like mix.
I agree with you. This is the reason I love this city. Like my wife and I have a deep attachment to this city. I've been here for 18 years now. And I left to go to New York for a year and then came back. Coming back was so sweet. And I love that just the vibe here is so beautiful. And I know what you mean. It's like there is something incredibly special about this place. And we all feel like a deep nostalgia for it. And I feel a little bit of guilty. I feel like I'm betraying the city, even contemplating moving. And even thinking about leaving her, I'm like, I'm making a mistake in that way. But then I go on Trulia, and then I look at property in coastal Georgia, and I look at these mansions, literal mansions on the marsh, just with like, what do they call them when it's a mansion? Like coach houses, or I don't know, like it's equestrian terminology. Like that what you're looking at it, you're like, I could for that house in LA, that's $100 million house.
I know. You're like, I could get there now.
Yeah.
I could go and get that right now.
Yeah.
I know, and it's hard. I mean, you just have to really fall in love with the place. And I feel like where you're at now, it's such a weird thing too. This is a strange thing. Is when my kids were really little, I always thought, well, we're a little tribe now. Where you could put us in Wisconsin, you could put us in Manhattan. It doesn't matter because it's all happening in here.
Yes.
And we're not going out. We're not doing all these crazy things that you do when you're young. But now my kids are quickly through that, and now they're going to be taking off and going places. Oof. And then it's back to my wife and I. So now we're like, well, this is back to, we're not that tribe anymore. We can go back to being a little more nomadic if we wanted to.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. You did it. I mean, that's beautiful, and that's an incredible thing. And what you just described, though, that's the realization I've been having. This is our family. Wherever we are is home, and I've never felt anything like that. Except when I was a very little kid, and it's just the most beautiful thing. And it reminds me of, God, have you ever seen 28 Days Later? that zombie movie.
Oh yeah.
Fuck, it's good. But there's this part where
it's good.
this father and his daughter are on top of this van, and they're laughing, and they're like in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, and some other survivors or whatever make this commentary. They're like, "Look, they're fine because they've got their family," and that is one of the weird things I didn't expect. I might have distantly imagined it when my wife was pregnant and I knew I was going to be a dad, but wow.
Yeah.
And then also you reprioritize. It's like, shit, okay, I love the vibe here. And I specifically, I like going to the Comedy Store and, that's the beach and stuff. I love the chance I get to go to the beach, but that is not I love being close to Big Sur. I love being close to Stanford. I love California, but you think when you've got a kid, you reprioritize to the point where it's like, who gives a shit if I want to go to the Comedy Store on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays and get hammered? You know what I mean?
It's kind of like, it's kind of like the bald conversation. It's like, what am I, an idiot? what do I care about that stuff for?
Yeah,
it's not real.
Exactly. This is his childhood. I did my childhood. Bring him to a place where there's lots of land that he can wander around on, get lost on, where I have to worry about him like wandering in the woods or whatever. Go do that. And then when it's time, come back here if I want to enjoy the wildness and the vibe of the city. But God, what an embarrassing, dull thing. It's like, what have I become? I'm gonna go somewhere safe to raise my kids.
I know. It's a big conundrum. Who feeds you guys when you're home? Who does the cooking?
Well, right now my wife will cook. I will cook. There's no primary feeder, or we order in. And I'm trying to like relieve my wife of the, I think she gets guilty because she thinks she's supposed to be cooking more or something like that. And like, I'm trying to like, I don't want her to. That's the worst meal, a meal cooked by a person who's making it because they're trying to be something that they don't want to be.
Right.
I hate that.
Just out of obligation.
Just out of some like weird, like I don't know what. And honestly, I mean, it's embarrassing. Like there was a time when I'm like, well, I'm making the money, so it would be nice. And I just realized like, where did I get that idea from? And also, man, I really like to cook. Like. Yeah. It's fun to cook. And also she cooks and it's delicious. And then we order in. I think we've got a pretty nice harmony happening in the house because while I'm doing this and getting happy like podcast and make art and stuff, she's cooking lunch for the baby and taking care of the baby and,
right.
And is doing a great job at that. So, I don't know. I think we share the cooking responsibility and we order out a lot.
What do you like that she cooks?
Oh man, she makes this really incredible gnocchi with this vodka sauce that she makes, and then sometimes she'll mix some lamb in there, and it's really good. And
potato.
Yeah, gnocchi.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that's what it was, but yeah, that's it. And she'll. Yeah. But what I love about it is when she's making it, it's so weird. The Hare Krishnas have this idea. They say don't go out to eat because you don't know the psychic state of the chef. And that in the same way, when people are painting, you can, like, if you look at a disturbed painter's painting, you feel that depression. Like when you look, you can feel it. It's like when you look at some paintings from Van Gogh, or like when you listen to Elliott Smith, captured inside of their art is their sorrow, and it's powerful. But you don't want that when you're eating a steak. And
right? No, that's got to be filled with joy and love.
Yeah, exactly. And like when that's the other cool thing about having a family is like when you're tasting that food that was made by someone who's like in love with you and in love with being a mom. Wow. Oh, man, that's pretty cool. That's like Tolkien level. That's like elf food from The Hobbit or something, It's like, it's delicious.
It's really true. It's really true. You know, I did this show on the Food Network for a while where I was visiting bakeries around the country, and each one was like, of course, like the kick-ass one in the town, or several, and the places that had a great reputation and were very successful, they all came from the person or people who ran the place who were doing it out of pure love. They just, now they're running a business, so it may have changed somewhat, but they still just loved what they were making and loved what they were doing. And that, as mystical as it sounds, that's the thing that separated them being successful from the other people that opened up a bakery and went out of business in a year.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's weird. It's unquantifiable is the problem. I mean, what are you going to put that in a recipe? Like have some transcendent, primordial, elemental love about cooking this food and add, a cup of that.
I know.
You can't quantify it. It's a problematic situation. And I think because of that, it gets left out of conversations regarding creation in general.
Yeah. No, I mean, think about it. I mean, that kind of explains, why people are successful in all parts of the arts. I mean, if you have a comedian that's phoning it in and not really in love with what they're talking about. I remember Kinnison had some great quote, like, why should the audience care about what you're talking about if you don't?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and, just watching other comics just phone it in, and that's kind of the same concept.
I quit comedy for a year because of that. When I went to New York, I was on stage, and I realized I'm phoning this in. I don't like what I'm saying. I don't like any of my jokes. I'm taking up stage time for people who love what they're doing, and this is just fucked. Like, I can't do this. Like, I could do it, but like, what am I getting out of it? Like, there's nothing I'm getting, and I'm certainly not giving the audience anything. And if I am, it's a sham thing I'm giving them. If they're enjoying it, they're enjoying a trick. That's not what I don't. So I took a year off until I really wanted to do it again. And then I started loving it again. And at that point, it becomes a whole different ball of wax. But and then the pandemic happened, and now we're fucking stuck again. But yeah, man, don't you think it's a little bit of a, you have to be careful with this line of thinking, because like in the spiritual world, there's something called spiritual bypass, which is you can pretend you're being spiritual when you're being a coward and you need to confront something, but you're tricking yourself into imagining that you're being non-violent, non-aggressive, when really inside you're furious, but you're using your like imaginary spiritual platform to not react to something that needs to be taken care of. But similarly, if we get too caught up in the idea of like you have to love what you're doing at every moment, then you know what I mean? Sometimes no matter what it is, you're not going to love doing it.
No. I totally agree. And it's the mistake I think that I've made is thinking that you have to be in those moments like all the time. Like whenever I would read about Buddhists and being in the present and living in the present and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, I guess I'm just not going to achieve that because I am an American running in a career, trying my best to make money for my family, doing all this other stuff. So I guess I'm just not going to be a part of that present moment. But then when I started to meditate and stuff, as I was going along, I just kind of came to the settling part where, aside from the meditation, if you're present 5 minutes in your day, just that is remarkably more than normally you have, or most people have. So I kind of let myself off the hook. It was like, I don't have to be grateful and walk around thinking like, oh, zippity-doo-dah, everything's wonderful, and try and maintain that. But I should allow myself 5 minutes, not in a hard time, but 5 minutes of being grateful, take a deep breath, think, okay, this is cool that I get to do this podcast and talk to you. We had this funny caper doing this thing today. That was cool. And just kind of like really feel it for a second and then go back to the race. Yeah. And I think as an American, I think that's probably good enough. It does recalibrate your brain. It does make you think. It does make you more grateful without thinking that, like you were saying, like it has to be all the time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I love that. That's it. That's the way I've been taught, is that very thing. Just especially when you sort of play around with the time frame that Buddhism and some of the Eastern philosophies are dealing with, that, they're some of them have, not all forms of Buddhism, but some forms of Buddhism have within it reincarnation. And certainly in Hinduism, we have this. And even in like Christianity, if you go and read some of the Gospels, weirdly, there's this implication of some kind of reincarnation, and it's almost across the board. But so if that's the idea, and then you take the philosophies that say, well, the thing we're in is kind of like a rock polisher for the soul or whatever, a very slow polishing process that takes place over millennia, then the idea of achieving any type of equanimity for even a few seconds in this never-ending series of incarnations is amazing. Just a few seconds of it in a lifetime is incredible. But then like a daily meditation practice, that's beyond the beyond. And then, to achieve, something more than that, well, great. But it's always great, I guess is what they're saying. There's no rush.
Yeah. No, I could totally get that. I mean, that's why it's so funny about this pandemic thing, where people are like being forced to just cook for themselves, like just stay at home and actually make food in their house, because everything got so frightful. And then can I take out, and is it going to be in the package? And all of a sudden everybody's just bringing food and like cooking. And it's like, that is something we should be doing all the time. It's like we should be just that slowing down, like what you say, like that your wife is making something in the other room, and then it's going to be your turn to slide in there, and now you're doing that thing. Like, that's a present moment, and that's something like we kind of lost track of. Like, when you think about this, of being all of a sudden being at home, for me, it's the travel. When I look at like what I was doing just 4 months ago, the travel was insanely fast.
Yeah.
The pace of the daily life was crazy fast, and that we were eating just like garbage just to keep going, because we couldn't even have time to sit and like actually make food for your family.
Yeah.
Like, those are the three big adjustments, I think, for me.
Yeah, man. This to me, the conspiracy theorist side of me, this is what I think is the great secret that they never wanted us to find out. But, you're not supposed to know that. Like, they were, have you ever seen The Century of the Self on YouTube?
No.
Oh, it's great. It's a documentary about, I can't remember his name. He's Freud's cousin, which is really bizarre, but he's one of the people that was behind marketing. And so it's, this incredible documentary on this guy who was completely unapologetic in his voodoo that he was using to get people to buy shit. And that later became essentially the methodology of all marketing campaigns. So, for example, there was a problem, which was smoking was associated with masculinity. So only got Bernays, that's his name. I think it's Edward Bernays. Smoking was associated with masculinity. And so the cigarette manufacturers, that's half the population. We've got to get the other half to smoke. They go to Bernays and they're like, what can we do? How do we get the women to start smoking? Because it's seemingly what only dudes do. So what they did is they gathered together women who were for women's right to vote. Suffrage, is that what they call it?
Yeah.
And so, what are they called? Suffragettes or something? There was a name for it back then, but they, so he gathered them together during, I think, a Macy's Day parade, and told the press that they were going to, protest against, men, like, what do you call it? The patriarchy, by smoking during the Macy's Day parade. So the press came, they took pictures of them pulling up their skirts, and they had cigarette packs in their garters or whatever, and smoking. So what he did there is now a classic move, which is he attached a brand to a social movement. And if you successfully do that, so that as a representation of the social movement, you're consuming this brand, then you're going to make all kinds of money because people are buying your shit to show that they are part of whatever it may be, the Pepsi generation, right? So this idea that was used to be the way it was, I think, in early America, which is you took pride in your ability to cook. And you took pride in your ability to sew your own clothes and to make your own butter and to do your own. It was good. It was like considered a really wonderful, powerful thing. Gradually, because in the culture that we're in, you can't have people fixing their shit. If you do that, they're not going to buy new shit. This is that planned obsolescence thing. You know, you want to have stuff that's going to break down so people will buy more stuff. And so for this all to work, you need to have everyone running at a breakneck speed so that they really think, fuck, I don't have time to fix that. Just get a new one. And now that we've all slowed down and we're hanging our own lights, we're doing our own work, we're painting our own shit, we're cooking our own shit, we're growing our own stuff. It's not that we're doing this and suddenly we're like, God, this sucks. I see why I was buying new stuff and ordering in food and getting other people to fix it because this sucks. We're realizing this is amazing. I love it. I like making my own food. I like learning how to do new stuff around the house. And I don't want to have people do this for me anymore. Holy shit, man. That's the part that makes me think the economy as we know it might be in for some trouble, because when they start stuff up, I don't know if everyone's going to be like, yeah, let's get going again.
I know. And look, I think we just got too much of everything. And while I love a good restaurant, sitting with a nice cocktail with a friend, sitting, going out and having a great meal, did there have to be thousands of restaurants every 2 feet?
Yeah.
Like when we were kids, it was a big deal if you went out to eat in a restaurant. There weren't that many around.
Right.
My wife was just saying the other day, do you remember when we were kids and mom decided we're getting pizza tonight? It was like, it must be someone's birthday.
Yeah.
Like this is unheard of.
Yeah.
And now there's so many. I think you're right. I think when it comes back, unfortunately, we are going to lose a number of them, but it might be the right number.
Well, I think that's going to, I think I am a little bit, maybe we're both being a little idealistic because in our minds, we do have this fantasy that people are all connecting with some kind of, but maybe the reality. My friend said the creepiest thing. I was talking to him and, thinking of post-pandemic or just we were creeping each other out. And I'm friends with comics, so I've heard all kinds of creepy scenarios, all of them. This is to get us ready for an asteroid impact. This is because, what's the weird one? Bill Gates wants to put microchips inside of us. That one's wild.
Right?
Yeah, the Gates Foundation wants to lower human population and inject us with nanobots.
Oh no!
The what's the other one? I've heard a lot of different scenarios that are all equally creepy. But
it's so creepy.
My friend told me the creepiest one. He's like, no, I think what happens is just everything goes back to the way it was, and nobody thinks about this that much.
I think he's right.
That's the darkest.
I know, but he's right.
We just forget about it. We just go back. Yeah, that thing, that pandemic, whatever. I got to get to work. I'm running late.
No.
Yeah.
He's right, though. I mean, because
be
anytime there's like an earthquake and everyone's like freaks out, we need water, we need paper towels, we need all this stuff, and everyone goes and gets it. And then as soon as it's over, no one buys that stuff. No one thinks about it. No, they just, no, I think he's totally right.
I do too.
What did when you said when you were really little and you thought, when you said earlier that it was when I was really little that I thought about being in a permanent state of what you're creating now with your family. How little are you talking? How old were you?
Oh, I think I was probably I'm going to say like 6 or 5. Like we had this beautiful child, like first few years, growing up in coastal Georgia, where like, I think my parents, their marriage was still working at the time. And I don't think my dad had, like, I think, PTSD is, I don't know if you have any people who who have it, but good Lord, it is one of the great plagues of our society, man. Because, the United States has been at war for 93% of its history. And isn't that insane? And
that's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? So we've got this like endemic PTSD situation that, you hear about like how more vets are killing themselves than dying at war. And we've become weirdly accustomed to this high rate of suicide among veterans. Like, it's just something we kind of accept. Well, the reason they're killing themselves is because they have this disorder, which is a problem of short-term memory. And it's tied into, some people theorize there's some kind of evolutionary reason for it, which is if you experience some awful, awful, awful thing, it's better to keep it in short-term memory all the time so that it doesn't happen again. So you get this flashbulb effect with memory where these people see awful things, they do awful things, and it just hangs right there in short-term memory, and it just doesn't get filed right. And because that they're always in this state of like either sedating themselves or like, with booze or pills, or just in a state of literally reliving this horrible event over and over and over again, they kill themselves because they'd rather be dead. And so my dad had that from Vietnam, and I think he was self-medicating with alcohol. And I think that ended up with us having a really, really turbulent childhood where he was trying, now as a dad, man, all this stuff went out before I became a dad where you judge your parents. Now I'm like, Jesus Christ, they were doing their best. No matter what it was, they were doing their best. But fuck, he was
probably young too, right?
Yeah, man. He's this young, handsome kid from just like charismatic and like, but man, I think he lost control. And when he got older, he like became way more peaceful and, way more real wonderful being to be around, which was always inside of him. But shit, fuck. We went through a rough patch, man. And but before the grand tour of the United States happened, we were in coastal Georgia, man. And it was just beautiful. Because when you're a kid that age, you're not thinking like, well, I bet my parents end up getting into a toxic relationship where it's impossible for anybody to find any real stability because of my dad's trauma from being in a stupid war. You're just like, we'll always go to the beach.
Right. Yeah, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Mom's making peanut butter and jelly again.
Yeah. Wow, these flowers smell so good. Well, that's the Garden of Eden experience. It's like, that's it. And then you end up in one way, shape, or form, you're not there anymore. And that's, I think, look, I know I'm anomalous in the sense that when you hear about most comedians' childhoods, usually what you hear is stability, love, not a lot of anything weird at all. Most comics you talk to have had a really wonderful childhood. But I think I'm anomalous in the sense that my childhood was it wasn't fucked. It wasn't terrible. Obviously, I don't know if my sarcasm is being lost on you or you're just ignoring a shitty joke on purpose.
No, it's actually, I literally was trying to see if you were, I couldn't get if you were being sarcastic or not, because I just had this conversation with somebody that, who was it? It was another comedian who said that, that most people think that comedians always have so much to deal with and they're always dark and fucked up. But when you talk to them, it's not really the case. And I was making the argument that it may not be the case that that's where they are now, but comedians are very clever. So whatever they've started, whether it was blissful and they had stability or they had chaos, they've crafted a way to get here where it's kind of okay now.
Yeah.
That's the cool part about they're clever little beings.
Yeah, that is the coolest part, man. I mean, that's the alchemy of the thing. And I and I always like, I definitely like my growing up compared to other people was wonderful. I'm not saying look at I mean, I'm not trying to compare myself to one of the greatest comics that ever fucking lived, who maybe he was an alien, Richard Pryor. But you look at his childhood, and it is, it's incomprehensible what that was.
It's a heavy life for a 50-year-old man, and he's a child living it.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And then you look at like his ability to take that and talk about it. I mean, only after I started doing comedy and really started thinking about some of his jokes. The joke about them like scrubbing his skin off after he incinerated himself smoking crack. I don't know if you remember that joke. But when I think about how not only was he able to somehow to make that funny, but he's able to say it without sounding like a victim.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Point. He was able to say it so the audience was comfortable even hearing it at all is unreal. How could you do that? Like insane that the audience is like somehow forgetting he's talking about something that really happened to him.
Yeah, but I think what's interesting about it, and it kind of makes sense with you too, is that it's more than talking about it. It's more than what he's talking about. Like on paper, you write that out and you're like, ooh. Yeah. But the person standing up there is a whole being, and you're getting the childlike vulnerability that you're rooting for him while you're talking to him. It's that, and again, not to compare you to any other artist, but you have that thing. You have that when you talk about the child, your childhood and bouncing around and stuff. I don't see it as a story that's 30-something years old or whatever it is old. It's present. You are still childlike. You are still that kid. Cool. You are somebody who is, again, in his clever way, has kind of crafted himself to have a family and be doing his thing and growing grapefruits. But there's still, I like when you tell stories of being on coastal Georgia, I totally see it. I don't have to.
That's cool. Thanks.
Paint that childhood in my head.
Oh man, that's cool. Yeah, I think that's it, right? That is, I've never thought of it before, but damn, man, that's really, really cool. Yeah, it's like it's not like you're up there seething or something, you're
right.
It's like you're not like bleeding
or being bitter.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And somehow just that alone is as positive as you can get, even though the thing you might be recounting is brutal. Yeah. That's brilliant, man. I've never thought of that. That is cool. That is definitely cool.
It's an interesting thing too when you say, like, when you're a kid and you look around, you're like, this isn't going to change. Like there were times when my kids were little and we were in like a New York apartment and we had them like downstairs in this, like under this spiral staircase, which like as an adult you'd be like, ooh, is this going to scare the hell out of them? Like, why? They're like in a windowless room right now underneath the staircase, and they're like, we want to go back to that magical place. You know what I mean? You just kind of like you paint that. Do you remember who was cooking for you when you were at that age? Was mom doing it? Was there?
Yeah, it was my mom. Was a great cook. My grandmother would cook for us. She had this old school Southern pantry with like big bags of rice, flour, grits. What are those cookies? God, what are they called? Something Charles. They're these Southern cookies, man, that we always had around the house. Ritz crackers. Like
the best.
Infinite Ritz.
The best.
And always the smell of rice. Like, cause that was like both my mom and my grandmother and my wife. This was one of the things where I didn't even think about it. But the first time my wife, who is also from the South, cooked rice for us. And I'm a rice snob, man, because I have generational rice recipes, and this is hypocritical because I can't cook rice for shit. But my mom and my dad and my grandmother would make the best rice of all time.
What kind? Like what kind of?
I'm not talking about any specific variety of rice, though.
No, but I mean like jambalaya kind of rice dishes, or is it
rice
like
with butter? And like the way they cooked it at the perfect, it sounds dumb, and maybe I don't know if this is a placebo rice effect or something, sentimental placebo rice, But damn, they could make some great rice, and they knew how to not cook it too long. They knew not to take the top off. All these specific things about making rice. And my wife makes the best Southern rice of all time. I remember realizing, like, oh my God, I remember saying to her, this is Southern rice. She's like, I grew up in the South. Of course I can cook rice. And it's the
that's
best.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's the best, man.
Oh, that's so amazing. That's so, yeah, because if she didn't, if she was a Yankee just trying to make hard white rice, you might not be together right
Watery
now.
rice. Or also if she didn't have that like thing that I know it sounds cheesy, but she's proud of the fact she can make really great rice. She knows it's no joke to have that. And now I get to watch my son eat Southern rice and grits, because I've learned how to make great grits. And not that it's hard. It's not hard. But I love making grits, and like feeding my son grits in the morning. He eats, he goes, ooh, wow. It's the best.
Yes. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Southern cooking is, I didn't grow up with it. So to me, it's like, I have to go visit Southern cooking, because I don't have Southern folk in my family. We're from New Jersey and New York and Italian and all that kind of stuff, and my wife has some Arabic, and there's like all that kind of stuff. So Southern cooking to me is just like, it's just like going to Disney World. It's like and it's so joyful, and it's so intense and so unique that it really kind of makes it kind of makes sense that we're different people, because if you're fueled with that, you've got to be a different kind of person.
Well, look, for sure. I mean, for like somebody's not afraid to eat a stick of butter with a meal.
Yeah.
This is with the other day, I've been getting into we have an Instapot. And the other day I realized, which is an amazing device. Do you have one of these things, a pressure cooker?
No,
cool,
I don't know.
It's interesting. I'm just learning all the stuff, but it also functions as a slow cooker. And so my wife's dad sent us all this, like, when the pandemic was starting, he sent us $500 worth of frozen meat. Like, it just showed up at the door, like steaks and burgers, and it was terrifying. It was a terrifying thing to get, because the message behind it is like, strap in. But
oh no,
I'm sending you survival meat. But you know what I mean? But
that's pretty heavy.
Heavy, man. But within the meat was frozen chicken and dumplings for a slow cooker. Easiest thing in the world to make. Just dump it in. Start the slow cooker. So my wife, she always is surprising me with this stuff. So it's almost done. She goes and looks in the slow cooker, and she's like, "You got to add butter to that." And she goes and just gets a stick of butter, drops it in the slow cooker, and I'm like, "Oh my! I guess it's so delicious, so incredible." But she said like a Southern thing, like, "You can't just make chicken and dumplings without a stick of butter, honey."
Oh no!
It's the coolest thing. Who are you? You've never mentioned to me this rule about chicken and dumplings.
She's a big Southern mama.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good thing to be married to.
It sure is.
What was your grandma? How long was your grandma around?
98.
Whoa.
Yes, she lived in 98. Yeah.
How great is that, by the way? What kind of segue is that? You come from a culture that puts sticks of butter in stuff, and she lived to 98.
Yeah, 98, and she was, she was not the way you would expect someone who'd been eating butter for their entire lives to look.
Yeah.
She was like very healthy, and wow. She was an amazing person. She told me something really creepy when I was 13 or 14. I'll never forget it. She said, when I look in the mirror, I see an old person. But inside, I still feel like I'm 16.
Wow. Yeah, I get that.
Ooh, that was a mind fuck for me. That was like
know.
a Zen koan. That was just, I've thought about it my whole life. That
Uh-oh.
thing.
Oh man, when I hang out like with my nephews or something, and they're like young in the early 20s, and they're all like hanging out and drinking and stuff, and I'm like looking around and I'm like, on the inside I'm the same as them. I'm like, we're all like in this together, and then you realize they're looking at a total different being.
Yeah.
I'm not. They don't see the 20-year-old that thinks he's steering the ship. I totally get that.
Yeah. That.
Oh man. Did she make fried chicken? I always picture Southern homes having fried chicken.
I don't recall fried chicken. I recall some pies. I recall chicken, but not fried chicken. I'm sorry, Mima.
Yeah.
That I don't remember your fried chicken. I can remember there's a famous story that my family would tell about my brother when we went to visit my dad and his mother. Grandmother Clyde was her name. Very Southern name. And she made us fried chicken. And my brother, in the middle of the meal, said, Grandmother Clyde, thank you so much. This is just the way I like my chicken. Dry and tough. And it was like my dad never the laughter. And my poor grandmother's mortified expression, experiencing that unadulterated honesty from a kid, that
dry and tough.
But that's my grandmother fried chicken memory. I can't remember.
It's funny.
I know that my grandmother had, this was a Southern thing, is China, familial China. Did you all have that?
No. Well, yeah, but it would come out like only on like Christmas.
Yeah, that.
Yeah,
that thing.
yeah.
Do you still have your family's China?
No, I don't have. I think my sister has it. I think she has it. And there was like a drawer, and it had like a separation for all the utensils, like all the silverware, which was really silver. That was like something passed down, and like all the spoons, and then they would have to like shine the silver and get the plates out and set it for like just for Christmas.
Man. My dad left that for me. My mom left, so we have this now.
Wow.
And I'll feed the baby on the China and like grits on the China. It's the coolest thing, man. And it's like, I don't know how many Trussells ate off of that, but it's like, I get it. When I was a kid, I used to think, who gives why are we doing this magical plate bullshit? We barely ever use it. It's like, what is it? Now I get it. It's like, like I have my dad's cast iron skillets. Which is really cool because I don't know how many meals he cooked on that, but I'm gonna leave that to my kids. And there is something cool about that, pragmatic tools getting passed down.
That's amazing you say that. I never really thought of it that way. That's because I always saw it as like this bougie kind of a thing.
Same.
It's like, so we just have this china, and it's like, well, what's the point? But because my sister has this old percolator that like my grandparents used to make coffee out of, and it always strikes me that this is amazing. Like we're doing the same thing, hearing the same sounds come from this thing, the same smells, and we're drinking from this, and just as they did when they were even younger than I am now, sitting around doing it. That makes a ton of sense.
I have my uncle's butt plug collection. And
is what?
I know, man. I was trying to make this stupid joke, and it's like the spirit of my uncle flew into my body and fucked it up, and I deserved it.
Couldn't get butt plug out normally.
There was no way to make it fun. Like, listen, man, we're having this great chat, and I had to ruin it with a butt plug joke. I'm so sorry, but
it's all right.
Listen, this to me is like this is part of the cool thing when you get to have a family is you start realizing that all the shit. At least I have realized that all the stuff that I used to judge, and I got into existentialism. I love the idea of the outsider. And I love this idea, this like looking at the family. There were times where I was so stupid and I think probably angry about my own broken family in the past that I looked at the family as an aberration or making babies. And, I would non-ironically use the term breeder, and mean it. And really, I felt a lot of anger I think, towards families. I looked at them as a mundane, mediocre failure. If you found yourself in a family, then you were failing. You fucked up. Now, what have you done? You're just another person. Oh, yeah. And I would refer to neighborhoods as breeding grids. Like the places. It's terrible and dumb. And when Rogan was taking me on the road, I remember I was on stage working out some, either an anti-baby joke or an anti-family joke. And I remember, and he very rarely did this that was a cool thing about when he decides to take you under his wing. He rarely gives you notes about your jokes except to improve them, or he's got a tag, and that doesn't even happen much. He just lets you do your thing. But I remember he took me aside. He's like, man, you got to stop doing that. Like, people don't want to hear that. He was, at the time I thought, oh yeah, that's coming from someone with a family. He just,
right.
But now I realize, like, oh my God, it was just wrong. It was like a logically, not the joke wasn't wrong. Logic, my angle was wrong. It was a tortured premise in general. Now, but I really, that's one of the cool things is suddenly I'm getting this backstage pass to reality where you're like, oh.
Well, you don't realize it until you're in it, that it actually is, even artistically, just for the selfish part of that, is so rewarding. Yeah. And I remember we actually had that moment when we were thinking, like, are we going to do this? Are we going to try and make a family? And it was like, well, as comedians, as people that are all about new experiences, why are we going to pass on the biggest experience you can have on the planet?
Yeah! Yeah!
It makes no sense.
God, I love that. I love that. That, what you just did? You just burnt away the residual guilt that I still was feeling about having a family. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because
you're welcome.
It's one of the most profoundly psychedelic, primordial experiences I have ever had. I've taken acid at least 200 times, man. I have taken almost every psychedelic, if not every psychedelic, except for the new experimental ones, which I'll get to eventually. And nothing has come close to this. And and so, but I do understand how there is the potential within it to lose your edge a little bit, I guess, or to like reprioritize to the point where you're not working hard enough on your material,
Yeah. But it's kind of a strange thing because I feel like age does that also.
Yes.
And then you end up having to replace edge. You have to start replacing edge with craft in a way. Like you end up just having to, I don't know, deliver stuff in a different way.
I love what you just said so much. I think it is one of the, I don't know that you meant it this way, but I think it felt like, not at me, but in general, the edgy comic, it felt like one of the most well-crafted digs I've heard in a long time. And it was beautiful. And as someone who has relied on edge, like when I look back at some of my jokes and I realize how lazy the writing was in the sense that I was leaning into my perceived edge instead of telling the truth, which is as edgy as you can get. But you know what I mean? Trying to find where the cultural edge was and then hanging out there and then articulating what appeared to be blasphemies from that edge. That's not really, that's no craft at all. That's just going on Twitter, looking at what offends people and then trying to step over that line about shit you don't even care about.
Well, if you don't, then it's the thing for sure. But if you end up painting yourself into a bit of a box. I love it. I love when people can go to that and then like make people laugh off of stuff that is taboo or you open their eyes to something that's not. And I think you could still have that for sure. But if it becomes your only pitch and you don't, and like you said, like you all of a sudden don't care about all this stuff, but you have to throw that pitch. Then it's like, then you got to throw some, then you're kind of faking it. But if you have that with all this other stuff that you're now being exposed to, all this other deeper stuff, And now you mix that edge stuff that you have and your love of all that with all of this real deep rooted stuff. Oh
That's
man,
cool.
how healthy is that tree?
That's so cool, man. Yeah, that is beautiful. It's like you're making me think of. It's like you have to speak from your own edge. Like in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a verse which goes, "It's better to be an honest street sweeper than a dishonest king," and so your edge, it might not be on paper. It might seem like the most, I don't know, square, mundane thing, but for you, it's like that's where you're at, and that's the only edge that matters.
Absolutely. And I always because I don't live there, and I dabbled in it when I was starting out, and I don't think that I think the edge can exist in we always kind of think, well, edge must mean at the edge of the darkness of the underbelly of what the culture. No. It also means if you want to talk about being a mom, go to the very edge of that. Just be as thoughtful and go to the edge of talking about being a father, or go to the edge about talking about being an accountant. I mean, really, just go further than the other people are going in whatever's true to you. To me, I think that's what the definition of edge is.
Love it, man.
It's not. Yeah.
I saw George Carlin at the Comedy Store in the main room, and getting ready for one of his last HBO specials when I was the talent coordinator there. And I remember going in and like having that feeling of like, man, I hope he's still George Carlin. And he started with the worst, dumbest joke, man. It was like it was a stock joke about weather vanes and cocks or something. I can't remember what it was, but it was like, it was, I can remember the sinking feeling in my chest as I'm thinking like, oh my God, he's the age got him. And then I remember like 20 minutes in, he's talking about his wife's cancer screams. And the audience is locked in to that thing he could do. You're stuck now. He got you. He started off as soft could be. And then just, I've never felt anything like that in comedy. I've never felt anything more, and it sounds like I'm saying he was evil, which he definitely wasn't, but anything more like black magic than what he did. That just like this, like death metal. I've gone to one show where of this band called Sleep, where it's just drums and this bass guitar that's the most prime, boom, 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 and like the guy's like chanting or and the energy is so heavy, man, and beautiful but heavy. It was like that. Just and the audience was frozen, and I think there were people in there who wanted to leave but were paralyzed with the spell he cast. That was pretty cool, man. But it was like powerful. But his craft, I think, was starting off as in this light way.
Oh my God.
Man. And then it was cool. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, and how old was he at that point?
I don't know his
probably.
age. I don't know. I know this was maybe his second to last special. So I don't know what the age was there.
He's not a young man.
No. Oh no.
He's not a young man, and he's still edgy after going through all of that, right?
Beyond, edgier than I think anybody even, and not edgier than anyone would have wanted him to be, because he started doing this like, I don't know if when I watch his specials, it's there, but I don't think that's other thing that happens when you go see live stand up. There something else where he was like doing this weird, I don't know. It's like he's this termite. And he's eating away at the paradigm and breaking everything up right there in the moment. And you find yourself all of a sudden looking for something to hold on to, and you can't. You know what it reminds me of, man? There's this saying. Someone, like, I saw this documentary on this Tibetan teacher, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, who was one of the Dalai Lama's teachers. And they said, like, somebody like that can look, like, if you're hanging out with him, they could say a thing to you like, be kinder. And it changes your life forever. Whereas, something you read on a fucking cereal box doesn't mean anything. It's a bumper sticker. It's meaningless. But when it comes from a person like that, the energy behind the words sinks into your heart, and you're never going to be the same.
Wow.
I think that's what Carlin was like, where like his jokes had inside of them this kind of, I don't know what you would call it. I don't want to call it a poison because it wasn't like toxic.
Right. It wasn't negative. Right.
But what's the word for it? Like the stuff, like, I don't know, like it.
Like the weight of it.
Acidic. Caustic. It was dissolving. Like, I think a lot of places in the culture that people were like all sharing as being like, well, at least this is true. And I know this is like all comics do that to some degree, but man, his ability to do that was really, really magical.
No, it like we were saying earlier with Pryor, it's like there's the essence of the person. On paper, those words could mean something, but because it's coming through that person, through that vehicle, it becomes magical. Hey, before we break and you get to go eat more of my bread.
Yes, friend.
Which I can't wait for you to give me more reviews on. Seeing your son eat it was so great.
Great. And my wife too, who was like,
Nice.
She looked at it, she goes, "That's sour. Is that sourdough?" And then took a bite and goes, "That's sourdough."
That's awesome. I want to make sure that people are watching your show on Netflix because it's so good. And this is how, I don't know if I might have said this to you in text, but this is how good it is. First of all, it's just so fun to watch, and it's just a joyride. It's just, the animation is so great. It's the Rick and Morty. Who's the animator?
Pendleton Ward, Adventure Time.
Adventure Time.
Justin
Adventure Time.
Roiland is a brilliant human as Rick and Morty.
Yeah, but Adventure Time, it makes total sense that it came from that. It just has this craziness to it. But this is how cool it is, that as a father in my age, sitting with a 17-year-old who sees everything and knows everything, that was a meeting point of like, this is cool. Like when I dropped, after we watched the first episode, and then I dropped to her, yeah, I'm friends with him. It was like, huh, really?
That's the coolest thing I ever heard.
Yeah, it's like, it gave her a little moment of, who are you exactly?
Dude, let me tell you something. We shared a moment because when I gave your bread to my wife, I said, "This is from one of the great comics."
Oh, we're winning.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
It's so great. Yeah, but everybody has to watch it. It's so damn good. And I'm not even through it all. It's one of those little treats where it's like, I know I have more in the bank that I get to go see.
Cool.
Oh, man. Cool. I hope you keep making them.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I think both of our instinct is correct.
Yes.
I think when we came into this and we said we are friends, I think we just confirmed it.
Yeah, we confirmed it. And I cannot wait to have a social distancing event with you and your wife. If you guys are ready, I think we're allowed to if we wear masks, or I don't know what the rules are, but I think there's a safe way to do it right now. Let's hang out, man.
All right. Absolutely. We'll do it.
And when you
100%.
stop recording, I want to tell you something.
All right, cool. Thanks, man.
Thank you.